The Guardian Angel. Tessa was an ordinary young woman living an unremarkable life in a quiet town. Her days were filled with routine and predictability until the unexplainable began to shatter her peace. Objects in her home started moving on their own. Eerie noises echoed through the night, and unsettling dreams left her waking in a cold sweat. Fearful and desperate for answers, Tessa turned to the local church for solace. She hoped to find comfort and perhaps an explanation for the strange occurrences that had invaded her once normal life. At the church, Tessa was greeted by Sister Mary, whose warm smile and gentle demeanor immediately put her at ease. Sister Mary introduced her to Father Thomas, a seasoned priest with a commanding presence and an aura of wisdom. Both listened intently as Tessa recounted the strange events plaguing her life. Understanding her fear, Sister Mary and Father Thomas decided to perform initial prayers and rituals to cleanse her spirit and home. They sprinkled holy water, recited protective prayers, and blessed her house with incense. For a while, these actions seemed to work. The eerie noises subsided, and the disturbing dreams became less frequent. Tessa felt a glimmer of hope, believing that the worst might be behind her. However, the relief was temporary. As the strange occurrences resumed with greater intensity, Sister Mary and Father Thomas delved deeper into their spiritual practices and ancient texts. They sought to understand the true nature of the evil that haunted Tessa. It was then they revealed their chilling conclusion. Tessa was not just experiencing random hauntings. She was being targeted by a malevolent spirit. The revelation sent a shiver down Tessa's spine, knowing that the battle for her soul was far from over. The church was her only sanctuary, and the fight to protect her had only just begun. The eerie occurrences in Tessa's life escalated into a terrifying onslaught. She began waking up with bruises and scratches, as if unseen hands had clawed at her in the night. Her mental state deteriorated rapidly. Hallucinations plagued her waking hours, and her dreams were filled with grotesque and haunting images. The once comforting shadows of her home now seemed to writhe with malevolent intent. Recognizing the severity of the situation, Sister Mary and Father Thomas intensified their protective efforts. They conducted more powerful rituals, chanting ancient prayers and using sacred relics to ward off the evil presence. Holy water was sprinkled liberally, and blessed candles were kept burning at all times. Despite their efforts, the malevolent force seemed to grow stronger, mocking their attempts to drive it away. Determined to save Tessa, Sister Mary and Father Thomas immersed themselves in religious texts and sought divine guidance. Their relentless research and prayers led them to a horrifying truth. Tessa was not merely haunted by a spirit, but she was the unwitting host of an ancient demon. This revelation explained the demon's tenacity and the escalating violence. Understanding the true nature of the evil they faced, Sister Mary and Father Thomas knew that a simple exorcism would not suffice. They prepared for a climactic battle, ready to confront the ancient demon that had taken hold of Tessa. The final confrontation took place within the church, where a tense and dramatic exorcism unfolded. The demon resisted fiercely, shaking the very foundations of the sacred space. In a heart-wrenching moment, Sister Mary, with unwavering resolve, sacrificed herself to banish the ancient evil. Her ultimate act of bravery drove the demon out, saving Tessa but at the cost of her own life. As the demon's presence vanished, Tessa was left to grapple with the profound loss and the harrowing truth of her ordeal. The church remained a beacon of hope and sanctuary, a testament to Sister Mary's sacrifice and unwavering faith. The unholy confession. Detective Zena arrived in the small, eerie town, greeted by an unsettling quietness that hung heavy in the air. She was here to investigate a series of gruesome murders that had left the community in fear. The crime scenes were brutal, each more horrifying than the last, with no apparent connection between the victims, except the sheer savagery of the acts. As Zaina delved deeper, all evidence began pointing to Mark, a troubled young man with a history of mental illness. Mark claimed to hear voices urging him to kill, a confession that sent chills down Zaina's spine. Desperate for answers and seeking a deeper understanding of Mark's psyche, Zaina turned to Father James, the local priest. Father James had been counseling Mark and seemed to be the only person who understood his tormented mind. Zaina hoped that the priest could provide insight into the darkness that gripped Mark and perhaps even a way to stop the killings. Father James met Detective Zaina in the church's dimly lit office, the walls lined with religious artifacts and ancient texts. With a grave expression, he insisted that Mark was not merely a troubled young man but the victim of a malevolent spirit's possession. According to Father James, the only way to save Mark and stop the killings was to perform a special church ritual, one that had been used in ancient times to expel powerful demons. Zaina, though skeptical, was desperate for any solution that could prevent further bloodshed. They began the meticulous preparation for the ritual. Father James outlined the items needed: holy water, blessed candles, a crucifix, and specific relics from the church's vault. He instructed Zaina on how to draw protective symbols and set up the altar in the church's sanctuary. The atmosphere grew tense as they worked, the weight of the impending ritual pressing down on them. Meanwhile, Mark's condition deteriorated rapidly. He was kept in a secure room within the church, but the voices he heard became more insistent and violent. Mark would thrash against his restraints, screaming in agony as if in a battle for his very soul. The torment he endured was unbearable to witness, heightening the urgency of the situation. Father James and Zaina could see the physical and mental toll it was taking on him, making it clear that the ritual had to be performed as soon as possible. With everything in place, the church became a fortress of faith and hope, its sanctuary prepared for a confrontation with an ancient evil. Father James and Zaina stood ready to face whatever darkness lay ahead, praying that their efforts would be enough to save Mark and bring peace to the haunted town. The church sanctuary was bathed in the flickering light of numerous candles, casting long, ominous shadows on the walls. Father James stood at the altar, his voice resonating through the cavernous space as he performed ancient chants. He held holy relics, moving them in precise, deliberate motions. Mark, restrained and writhing, lay before the altar, his eyes wild with terror as the ritual began. Detective Zaina watched closely, feeling a mix of hope and apprehension. As the ritual progressed, Zaina began to notice subtle inconsistencies. Father James' chants, though seemingly authentic, had moments where the words felt wrong, almost sinister. His movements, while deliberate, sometimes seemed to lack the genuine reverence she had expected. The atmosphere in the church grew heavier, not with a sense of holy purpose, but with an unsettling malevolence. Her instincts as a detective kicked in, and she scrutinized Father James more closely. She saw fleeting glances of satisfaction in his eyes, a twisted pleasure in Mark's torment that didn't align with a priest's compassion. The realization struck her like a bolt of lightning. Father James was not the savior he claimed to be. He was the true villain, the puppet master manipulating Mark to carry out his own twisted religious vendetta. Determined to expose the truth, Zaina confronted Father James. She demanded an explanation, her voice echoing with righteous fury. Father James, no longer able to hide his true nature, revealed his dark intentions. He had orchestrated the murders, using Mark as a pawn to fulfill his deranged beliefs. His malevolent spirit was not an external force but the embodiment of his own corrupted soul. The revelation sent shockwaves through the sanctuary. Mark's suffering was a result of Father James' manipulations, and the ritual was merely a facade to maintain control over him. The true battle was not against an ancient demon, but against a man who had twisted his faith into something monstrous. The confrontation escalated, setting the stage for a climactic showdown that would determine the fates of all involved. The confrontation between Zaina and Father James reached a fever pitch. The sanctuary, once a place of solace, became a battleground of faith and fury. Zaina, fueled by righteous anger, fought to subdue the deranged priest. Their struggle was intense, each move echoing with the desperation of the moment. In the chaos, candles were knocked over, igniting the wooden pews and tapestries. Flames quickly spread, consuming the church in a roaring inferno. As the fire raged around them, Zaina managed to disarm Father James, delivering a decisive blow that incapacitated him. She rushed to free Mark, pulling him to safety as the flames grew higher. The church, now a blazing pyre, began to collapse, erasing any physical evidence of the sinister events that had transpired within its walls. In the aftermath, Zaina and Mark stood outside, watching the church burn to the ground. The townspeople, drawn by the flames, gathered in shock and disbelief. Zaina had stopped Father James, but the town was left to grapple with the horrifying truth. Their trusted priest had been a monster in disguise. The small community, once peaceful, was forever scarred by the dark revelations and the destruction of their sacred sanctuary. The silent prayer. Aubrey, a devout parishioner, found solace in the old church, its serene atmosphere a refuge from the chaos of daily life. However, her peace was shattered when she began experiencing terrifying visions of a ghostly figure during her visits. The apparition, a shadowy and forlorn nun, seemed to reach out to her, filling Aubrey with dread. Disturbed and desperate for answers, Aubrey confided in Sister Agnes. Sister Agnes, a compassionate and intuitive nun, took her concerns seriously. She believed that Aubrey was seeing the spirit of a former nun wrongfully accused of heresy and executed within the church walls. Recognizing the gravity of Aubrey's visions, Sister Agnes enlisted the help of Father Peter, a knowledgeable and compassionate priest well-versed in the church's history. Father Peter listened intently to Aubrey's experiences and agreed to assist in uncovering the truth behind the ghostly figure. Together, the trio delved into the church's archives, poring over ancient documents and forgotten records. Their research revealed the tragic story of Sister Maria, a nun who had been wrongfully accused of heresy and executed within the church walls centuries ago. The injustice and suffering she endured left a lingering presence in the church, manifesting as the ghostly figure haunting Aubrey. As they uncovered more details about Sister Maria's life and wrongful death, the encounters with her spirit grew more frequent and intense. The ghostly nun seemed desperate to communicate, her appearances becoming more vivid and chilling. Aubrey's fear and anxiety escalated, and even Sister Agnes and Father Peter began to feel the weight of the spectral presence. Driven by the urgency of the escalating hauntings, they intensified their efforts to understand Sister Maria's plight. They needed to uncover the full story and find a way to bring peace to the tormented spirit, knowing that only by doing so could they hope to stop the terrifying visions and restore tranquility to the church. In a dramatic encounter one stormy night, the ghostly figure of Sister Maria appeared more vividly than ever before. Aubrey, Sister Agnes, and Father Peter were present in the church when the spirit, radiating an eerie glow, revealed her true purpose. In a voice filled with sorrow and urgency, she disclosed that she had been protecting the church from a demonic entity trapped within its confines, a malevolent force responsible for much of the turmoil she endured in life. Shocked but resolute, Sister Agnes and Father Peter began to piece together the demon's history. They discovered that the demon had been inadvertently bound to the church during an ancient, botched exorcism, its evil influencing those within its walls. including the wrongful accusations against Sister Maria. Her execution had strengthened the demon's hold, but her spirit had remained to guard the church and prevent it from escaping. Determined to free both the church and Sister Maria's spirit, Sister Agnes and Father Peter prepared for a final, decisive ritual to banish the demon. They gathered holy water, blessed candles, sacred relics, and ancient texts required for the powerful exorcism. The church's atmosphere grew heavy with anticipation as they meticulously planned each step of the ritual, aware that the slightest mistake could have dire consequences. With the stage set for the final confrontation, they steeled themselves for the impending battle. The fate of the church and the soul of Sister Maria hung in the balance as they prepared to confront the ancient evil lurking within the holy walls. The final confrontation unfolded in the church, the air thick with tension. Sister Agnes and Father Peter began the ritual, chanting ancient prayers and wielding sacred relics. The demonic entity manifested, its presence dark and oppressive. As the battle intensified, the ghostly figure of Sister Maria appeared, her ethereal form aiding them in the struggle. With her guidance, they pushed back the demon, their combined faith and determination prevailing. In a blinding flash of light, the demon was banished, its malevolent influence eradicated. The church stood cleansed, its sacred aura restored. Aubrey, Sister Agnes, and Father Peter found solace in their victory, knowing they had freed Sister Maria's spirit and brought peace to the hallowed ground. The Dark Sacrament. Brittany had just moved to the small, quaint town, hoping for a fresh start. She quickly noticed something peculiar about the local church, which held nightly gatherings that drew in a peculiar crowd. Despite the town's serene facade, the church's activities sparked a sense of unease within her. Shadows moved oddly around the building, and hushed, urgent whispers carried on the wind late into the night. Curiosity and concern led Brittany to investigate. During her initial inquiries, she met Sister Margaret, a kind but reserved nun. Sensing a shared apprehension, Brittany confided in her about the strange behaviors and unsettling activities she had observed. Sister Margaret, with a solemn nod, revealed that she too felt something was deeply wrong. United by their suspicions, the two women formed a tentative alliance, determined to uncover the truth behind the church's nightly gatherings. Determined to uncover the truth, Brittany and Sister Margaret began their investigation under the cover of night. They carefully navigated the church's perimeter, avoiding the watchful eyes of the faithful who attended the mysterious gatherings. With each passing night, they grew bolder, sneaking into the church and eavesdropping on hushed conversations. Brittany used her phone to discreetly record strange symbols and snippets of unsettling chants. One fateful night, their investigation led them to a hidden door in the church's basement. Holding their breath, they descended into the dimly lit underground chamber, where they discovered a sinister truth. Father Lucas, the charismatic priest, was leading a cult that performed dark and malevolent rituals. Hooded figures surrounded an altar adorned with grotesque symbols, chanting incantations in an ancient, foreboding language. The air was thick with the stench of burning herbs and something far more unsettling. Brittany and Sister Margaret watched in horror as the rituals unfolded. They saw blood sacrifices and witnessed grotesque ceremonies meant to summon dark forces. The realization of the true danger they were in hit them hard. This was not just a group of misguided worshippers, but a deeply entrenched cult capable of unspeakable evil. Their fear deepened as they understood the full extent of Father Lucas's influence and the potential consequences of their discovery. Despite the terror gripping them, Brittany and Sister Margaret knew they had to act quickly. They continued to gather evidence, documenting every horrifying detail, preparing to expose the cult and save the town from the dark sacrament being performed beneath its very feet. Brittany and Sister Margaret worked tirelessly, gathering enough evidence to expose Father Lucas and his cult. They took photos, recorded videos, and collected documents that detailed the horrifying rituals performed in the church's basement. The evidence was irrefutable, and they knew they had to act before the cult could claim another victim. They discovered that the cult was planning a particularly significant gathering, a night when the moon would be full and the dark rituals would reach their peak. This was their chance to stop Father Lucas and save the town. They devised a plan to infiltrate the ceremony, disrupt the ritual, and expose the cult to the authorities. With the date set, they prepared for what they hoped would be their final confrontation. The night of the ritual arrived, and tension hung heavy in the air. Brittany and Sister Margaret made their way to the church, armed with their evidence and a renewed determination to put an end to the cult's reign of terror. As they entered the basement, the atmosphere was charged with a malevolent energy. Hooded figures chanted in unison, and Father Lucas stood at the altar, ready to begin the dark sacrament. As they moved to interrupt the ceremony, Father Lucas's voice rang out, commanding the cult members to seize them. To Brittany's shock and horror, the cult members obeyed without hesitation, revealing Sister Margaret's true allegiance. With a sinister smile, Sister Margaret removed her hood, exposing herself as a high-ranking member of the cult. She had been manipulating Brittany all along, luring her into a trap. "Did you really think you could outsmart us?" Sister Margaret taunted. "We knew you were investigating, and we used your curiosity to bring you here. Now you will be our next sacrifice." Brittany's heart pounded in her chest as she realized the depth of the betrayal. Trapped and surrounded by cult members, she fought to keep her composure, determined to find a way out of this nightmare. Brittany was dragged to the altar, her heart pounding as Father Lucas and Sister Margaret prepared the dark sacrament. Surrounded by chanting cult members, she felt the cold grip of fear but refused to succumb. Summoning all her strength, she broke free from her captors in a desperate, adrenaline-fueled struggle. She fought off the cult members, her survival instincts driving her every move. In the chaos, she managed to escape the basement and sprinted to the nearest house, frantically banging on the door and alerting the residents to call the authorities. Moments later, the sound of sirens pierced the night air. The police arrived just in time, storming the church and arresting Father Lucas, Sister Margaret, and the cult members. As dawn broke, the town began to heal from the revelation of the dark sacrament that had haunted it. Brittany found solace in knowing she had stopped the cult's reign of terror, bringing a sense of peace back to the community. The church, once a place of fear, was cleansed, and the townspeople slowly reclaimed their sanctuary.